Well, Democratic Senator Mark Warner, chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee, now wants a damage assessment to see what harm may have been caused to national security. With all of this, let's bring back Julia. Let's bring in the rest of our panel for some legal perspective. We have former federal prosecutor Andrew Cherkasky, attorney April Preyar as well. Thank you for being here. And I do want to bring up Trump's response first. He posted this on his social media platform, Truth Social, just after the release. Quote, affidavit heavily redacted, nothing mentioned on nuclear, a total public relations subterfuge by the FBI and DOJ, or our close working relationship regarding document turnover. We gave them much. Judge Bruce Reinhart should never have been allowed the break-in of my home. He recused himself 2 months ago from one of my cases based on his animosity and hatred of your favorite president, me. What changed? Why hasn't he recused himself on this case? Obama must be very proud of him right now. So there's a lot there. April, let's start with you. What stands out to you?
I was kind of chuckling at all of it. What stood out to me was the term break-in. They broke into my home. They're like burglars in the middle of the night coming to get me. So that's what kind of jumped out at me is, that he's still leading the narrative, guiding the narrative so that his supporters will believe that he's been attacked. But we still don't know a whole lot. So even though the affidavit, the very heavily redacted affidavit was released today, we know the types of documents that were found, but we don't know, like you said, what led them to search at this time. Other than the National Archives reporting, hey, we got these 15 boxes of documents, everything's kind of jumbled together, nothing's marked, this is not the appropriate way to house or store this information. I think you need to do some digging, but we still don't know a lot. We don't know who these civilian witnesses are. They're keeping this pretty close to the vest, which is not surprising because it's an ongoing investigation. So what jumped out at me was the word break-in, and I know that he's also used the term raid in some of his other postings.
Well, and Andrew, let's bring you in here. The affidavit does seem to debunk Trump's claim that he's been in cooperation with authorities to, quote, give them much. But the affidavit even includes a Dear J letter between Trump's attorney, Evan Corcoran, and the Justice Department's top counterintelligence official, Jay Bratt, that shows a real back and forth over the documents. And in it, Trump's lawyer says the president has the right to declassify material, but never comes out and actually said that he did. So, Andrew, what do you make of this? Does this show intent?
Intent of what? I mean, President Trump has essentially put forward his defense that he genuinely debates whether he had the right to possess these documents or not. We keep wanting to emphasize the idea that these are top secret documents or classified documents, and that may all well have been true at some point in time, but Donald Trump is saying that he had the authority to declassify them. Now, people want Donald Trump to prove that he declassified it, but the DOJ turned this into a criminal matter, which happens to extend certain constitutional rights to Donald Trump, which includes the idea that he doesn't have to prove anything. He doesn't have to defend himself. It's the government now who has to prove their case. So they have to prove that he didn't declassify these documents. That's going to be an overwhelmingly difficult thing to do because the president doesn't have certain procedures that they have to follow in declassifying documents. They're the president. They're given all sorts of authority to make those on-the-spot decisions about the declassification of sensitive documents. So I don't think we've learned a lot here other than the DOJ has gone all the way on this to say that Trump is a criminal on what could very well be a ticky-tacky debate about the maintenance of records that a president has a lot of authority over.
Well, April, what do you make of the whole declassification issue? Because a lot of the American public is hearing about declassification from a president for the first time. It is not as simple, though, as waving a magic wand and just saying, I have made it so, I have declassified documents. There's an entire process and a footprint and evidence that would show that something's been declassified, right?
I think we will see that. I think that Trump has a valid response that, hey, I declassified these, prove that I didn't, just like counsel just said. So we shall see what the process entailed and if he actually did declassify these documents or if that is a convenient response right now. But I don't think that anyone has said Trump is a criminal yet. I think what they're saying is these documents were not stored in the manner that they should be stored. And if you look at both the warrant and the affidavit, it never says specifically any actions that Trump took. It never says who stored them in this manner. It never points the finger at who's responsible for it. It just simply says that this is the manner that the documents were tendered to the National Archive after several requests over several months. And even that isn't specified. It says from May 2021 until I think January of the following year, but it doesn't say how many requests were made, the manner in that they were made. So there's still a lot for us to learn about all of this. But yes, I think that for right now, Trump has a valid response in that he said, hey, I declassified it, prove that I did something different.
Well, and Julia, let's go over to you because, I mean, speaking of the manner of storage, we're hearing the classified documents were amongst news clippings, newspapers, and magazines. It sounds kind of haphazard. Does that help ultimately show that there wasn't so much malicious intent and rather was just sort of a big mess?
It could, but I'm not a legal expert, but that's the big question. What does that mean legally without the intent there? Look, I think there was a picture painted, throughout this investigation. Definitely when we heard about the raid in the first place or the search a few weeks ago, that, there was a haphazard and maybe sloppy process of moving those documents from the White House or wherever to Mar-a-Lago. We definitely were hearing rumblings of that. So I think definitely the major question comes down to intent. We know that this seems very sloppy. The fact that these documents seem to be apparently mixed with those other clippings doesn't necessarily, I don't think, behoove Trump or make him look positive. However, I don't know if it necessarily proves intent either.
Well, Andrew, can you speak to that? Does it show anything?
Well, it shows obviously that there's a real debate here. I mean, the FBI in its affidavit is essentially saying that Donald Trump didn't have a right to maintain these documents after he was essentially notified of the idea that they wanted these documents back and that essentially they're not respecting the idea that there was a debate. They weren't going to court to fight over a subpoena. They turned this into a criminal matter. And when I say a criminal matter, that's the idea. The Fourth Amendment protects your home from searches by the government. And so what happened here is the Biden DOJ went into a former president's home, a likely opponent in an upcoming election here, and started to search that home to look for these documents that I think are ultimately a debate that's going to go all the way to the Supreme Court. So you see what we have, I think, ultimately is a debate that we need the the judiciary to weigh in on. But I don't think we needed to go about it by going into his home, as he says, with a raid, with police officers, as opposed to going through the courts and doing it with a subpoena.
Well, another document released today specifically mentions protecting our law enforcement and the intimidation of witnesses. We've already heard from Liz Cheney on this. Julia, can we go to you? How extraordinary is it to hear words like threats to safety in a case associated with a former president?
It's extraordinary, really, and I think it paints a picture of the political environment we're in right now, where, the DOJ, an institution that is not supposed to be political, has been painted in this political life, whether you are on the side of Trump or on the side of Trump's critics, and you are seeing, employees and, civil servants or attorneys at the DOJ and FBI agents, FBI work employees, et cetera, facing these kinds of threats. I think that is very unprecedented, and it's very dangerous, quite frankly. I mean, look, we're not living in a time far from January 6th when we've seen so many threats to law enforcement or, other matters, for example. So it's definitely jarring, I think, to hear that, and particularly, from the people it's coming from, these anonymous people, the anonymous people who are reaching out to the FBI and DOJ. It really shows, I think, how widespread right now this message is.
Well, and to follow up on that, and we'll go to you, April, earlier this morning, Trump called the FBI and the DOJ, quote, political hacks and thugs on social media. He's been very active. In a landscape of increased threats to law enforcement, is Trump just lighting that fire again?
I'm sure he is. I'm sure he is lighting that fire again. Again, we'll have to see how this all plays out and what the motivations were, because we still don't know that. We don't know what the motivations were for the search. But yeah, Trump is dealing with whatever information he has. He's trying to spin it in his favor. He is still also a bit in the dark as to what they have against him, because he also has only received the redacted information that we've received. So we shall see. But yeah, he's using language which best serves him, which isn't a bad strategy.
Well, and Andrew, I want to make sure we have time for this. Now that this is out there, do you think that witnesses will be scared to participate?
I think that people who are going to participate are going to participate, and people who weren't going to or have their alliance with Donald Trump are going to continue in that light. Ultimately here, Donald Trump is a bully with the words that he speaks. We all know that. He's been around for a long time at this point. But to say that it's actual witness intimidation or that it's obstruction of justice, they've never proven the case before. And now they're doing that with what I'm saying is a ticky-tacky debate over record maintenance.
Well, in April, even while the former president has been publicly saying, show us the document this whole time, his legal team never actually took a position for or against its release in court. What is the strategy there?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure why they didn't file something formally instead of simply taking to social media platforms to protest, when they could have gone into court and said, we formally object to this, lined up whatever their case law was in their favor, and had a judge actually rule on it. So I'm not sure. It seems like they're playing a game of wait and see, and that may also go in line with Trump's pending announcement to run again. He also seems to be playing the game of wait and see with that. So I'm not sure what their strategy is. They might just be waiting to see what ground the media outlets are able to make in getting a better version. I'm sure we didn't think it would be quite this redacted, but a better version of the affidavit release. But I'm not sure why his legal team has not jumped into court and said, stop this right now. We want a judge to rule.
Well, in April, I want to stay with the redaction issue for a moment. We were just looking at that image, heavy redactions, and certainly it provides the space for conspiracy theorists and armchair speculation from really anyone with a Twitter account. Do you think that the blacked out document will only cause more confusion?
Yeah, I mean, you see the debate we're having now. So I don't think that this like I said at the beginning, I don't think this gave us a whole lot of information. It told us there were 15 boxes. It told us generally what types of information was included in that, spies and et cetera, but we don't know a whole lot, and we won't know until the investigation continues, and possibly if someone is charged at some point, we'll find out more. But we don't know who the civilian witnesses are. We don't know who the FBI agents are. We don't know what caused them to do the search at this time. So there's a lot that is unknown. And yeah, there will continue to be speculation until we learn more information.
Well, certainly. And I do want to end quickly by asking all of you the same question, a yes or no answer, please. From what you have seen, did they have probable cause to go to Mar-a-Lago on August 8th, or do you need to see what's under that black Sharpie still? Let's start with you, Julia.
It would be nice to see what's more under that black Sharpie still. So it's hard to say. I think we would like to see more. I'm leaning towards, potentially yes, but there's just so much more we don't know.
Andrew, what do you have to say?
Asking an attorney to give you a one-word answer, I'll do it. I'll play your game. No.
April.
Yes.
All right, Andrew Cherkasky, April Preyar, Julia Manchester, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.